Today's episode of the Chalkboard Podcast is brought to you by Audible. You can get a free audiobook download and a free 30-day trial when you visit audibletrial.com/chalkboard. There's over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Again, audibletrial.com/chalkboard. Hey everyone, welcome to the Chalkboard Podcast. We are bringing you conversations from our hometown, Kansas City, Missouri. My name is Eric, and with me as always is my best friend and co-host, Micah.
What's up, dude?
What's up, man? How are you?
We got a sweet episode tonight that I'm excited to tell you about.
That was a pun.
But first I have to tell you an anecdote.
Go on.
I stopped at the Fast Stop, which is near where we record our podcast, and got a 6-pack of Boulevard Pale Ale for our episode.
Thank you.
And I purchased it and was walking away from the counter, and the cashier said to me as I walked out, "I hope you drink that on a boat." Which was just the greatest thing anyone's ever said to me. It's like the coolest thing. It's like, "Hope you drink that on a boat." Like, best wishes for you, man.
Once we're done here, I've got questions because I know all those guys from when I lived there. That's incredible.
I feel like he was just like smooth sailing, man, or like I hope you're relaxing. I feel like I hope you drink that on a boat is a way to say, like, man, I hope you're relaxing.
I love that.
I hope life is easy for you. I hope your life is soundtracked by yacht rock only.
I wish I could like put that in as just my always farewell. Like,
yeah.
Good night. Hope you hang out on a boat tonight. There's no good way to do it. That's the best way. He figured it out.
I think you just always say, I hope you drink that on a boat tonight.
Even if they're not drinking anything.
Eric, tell the people about our episode tonight, this episode, because it is one of my favorites.
Yeah, so tonight we sat down with David Friesen from Betty Rae's, our favorite ice cream shop in town. I always get like a little nervous when we do interviews with people who do something that we love. Like Betty Rae's holds a special place for both of us, and I don't want to just, say nice things about them this whole episode.
Yeah, and they say never meet your heroes, but in this instance, it was okay. So we talked with David a little bit about his background in ice cream, what inspired him and his wife to open up Betty Rae's, and then just kind of what he wants Betty Rae's to be for Kansas City. It was a really great conversation.
Yeah, let's jump into it.
All right, we're here with David Friesen, creator and proprietor of Betty Rae's Ice Cream. David, thanks for being with us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So we just got to taste some delicious beer ice cream floats at Betty Rae's. Tell us a little bit about those, of what you made for us, because they were, in a word, delicious.
I was real hesitant, but I'm all in now.
Yeah, I mean, just ice cream and anything is great. So, we got a lot of good local beers from Torn Label, from Tallgrass out in Kansas, Casey Beer Co. over in Waldo, and also some Boulevard. And we just kind of paired them with ice creams. And so we had the Jam Band from Boulevard with the vanilla, which is nice. And then the Casey Beer Co. Dunkel, which goes really well with our creme brulee caramel. The two just like combine in a really nice way. And then the last one was the House Brew from Torn Label, which also uses Mayest coffee. And so we just put some chocolate in there, made a mocha. Really nice.
That was my favorite.
You like the mocha one?
I could eat that every night.
I like the creme brulee and then the Jam Band both. Those are my two favorite. I really love those. Ooh.
So tell us a little bit about how you got into ice cream, because you didn't just buy and create an ice cream shop. You've kind of had a history working in shops, and tell us about what inspired you to do that in the first place and what drew you to ice cream.
Yeah, so right out of college, like we were talking about, I had an English lit degree, so couldn't do much with that.
Yep.
And started working in this little ice cream parlor in Columbia, Missouri. And we made everything in the back. We could think up a flavor, make it the same day, and then sell it the next day. So it was just a lot of fun. And I was managing the shop, so that kind of let me see, this is how you would run a small business. Like, you got to have these things in place. You got to do this thing. You got to be consistent, et cetera, et cetera. And so the idea just stuck in my head. And then from there, I went to another ice cream place, and then I was doing baking and bread and pastry. And the whole time, it was like over 8 or 9 years, the ice cream was still just stuck in my head and how you would do that. And we would go to other cities and, check out parlors. And, it's just such a fun thing to do. And there's nothing better than just like, going somewhere to a really cool shop, getting an ice cream cone and walking around, seeing a new place or whatever. And we felt like that was something that Kansas City didn't quite have yet. And so we wanted to do it here.
Talk a little bit about the creativity aspect of you're just in Sparky's in Columbia, just back there like, hey, we'll think up of a flavor. Like, how did you come up with flavors or ideas or?
Well, sometimes stuff would just pop into your head. Sometimes people would suggest, like we have a little suggestion board in the shop, and people write down stuff. So some of our great ideas back then at Sparky's came from that board, and people would suggest things. Other times, like I was in the grocery store, and I just happened to see pineapples and Thai basil, like within a minute of each other, and I was like, oh wait, yeah, I was like, it's good in curry, it'll be good in ice cream. So I took the two of those, and pineapple Thai basil ice cream is really nice. Other times you just really want to make something work, like the morel ice cream that we did last summer, or like the Joe's barbecue ice cream. It was like, ideas that you have that take a little more tweaking and kind of more of a fine-tuned process.
Yeah, the Joe's ice cream definitely stands out, us being from Kansas City and it being sort of, it went viral, had like 1 million views on a video. But when I heard that, I was definitely one of the people who were like, I don't know about that. But then hearing you talk about it, and then when we talked about even just the floats that we had earlier, you really seem to care about what goes in it. And rather than just be like, here's what we'll do a zany barbecue ice cream. It seems like there's a lot of thought and a lot of like, how can we actually make this into something good? I feel like it could be easy going the other way.
Oh yeah, sure. Because all the unicorn stuff that people were doing at like coffee shops or ice cream places, you could put a bunch of coloring in anything and make it look really cool, or like load a bunch of candy on a sundae. But to make something that is on the one hand sensational and on the other hand really delicious it's just it makes everything an experience. And in my mind, ice cream should be an experience. It's about going, it's about tasting, it's about the surrounding and what you're hearing, and then interacting, how the ice cream interacts with you and the world. And so I think the barbecue does that. And also, I couldn't believe that nobody had tried barbecue ice cream in Kansas City. That's the food of KC. And so, it's kind of obvious. There should be barbecue everything.
Yeah.
But
Agreed. This question might be a little weird, so bear with me, Eric.
He sees me roll my eyes already.
I look at your menu and I see scoops, shakes, malts, floats, sundaes, sandwiches, boozy shakes, boozy floats. What's your favorite way to consume ice cream? Or do you like all the ways, just in different forms? Some people are cone people, some people are cup people.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's I barely eat it when I'm working, because to me, like, ice cream is a fun, like, it's a leisure activity, and so you want to be walking around with a cone on a nice day or something.
Yeah.
So I really like to just have a cone and like take a walk.
Cone, I like the cone.
Yeah,
I don't get a cone enough.
I'm a cup guy.
Cup guy.
Cup guy.
See, I love the minimalism of the cone and how you can just like finish the whole thing and then have nothing left. There's
That
something
is
kind of
nice.
beautiful about that.
It's a very green way to eat ice cream. That's a terrible joke.
And so I like the root beer floats,
Yep.
like we were talking about. Just there's something so classic about them. Like root beer and vanilla, it's amazing. It's so good together. But the one that I really like to have in the middle of the day is the affogato. So, just a shot of really good espresso over a scoop of really good ice cream. And it just lights you up.
And that's the kind of thing. I think I was in Charleston, South Carolina, actually, where Eric's brother is a professor.
Yep.
And I had an affogato for the first time, and it was like such a good like afternoon treat. Like I'm a guy who I drink coffee like pretty much all day long until I start drinking beer. And the affogato was like a nice like 2:00 little sweet treat, little caffeine. I just wish more places in Kansas City did it, but
It
I'm glad
seems
you
so
guys
decadent to me. It seems like the highest form of decadence is like a really rich ice cream with like a nice espresso shot poured over it. It's insane. I love it.
And if you see how we serve them too, we have them on a little wooden tray, like a nice shot glass of
100%.
espresso, a nice chilled glass of the ice cream, and then we'll like put a waffle cone on the side of it, so a little something to munch on. But the nice thing is about it too is like the portions aren't huge, but the flavor is so immense. Like you will feel fulfilled, but like it's not that filling,
That's awesome.
it's not as decadent as you think. It's not like a Sonic banana split, something like
I
that.
love that that's your bar for decadence is a Sonic.
It
banana
doesn't get any
split.
better than that.
No, not
That's it for me.
decadent is not synonymous with good there. Just like
Yeah, I know. I get
it
what
like
you're
fills
saying.
my stomach. Talk about your baking background and baking history, because it kind of seems like it seems like, and I want to talk later probably about like how you manage I'm really into ice cream and making stuff, but also, managing a small business which comes with a lot of responsibilities. But it seems like you're interested in like the science or culinary aspect of food. So talk a little about your baking.
Baking just kind of like popped in my head. And I mean, looking back, I think, so my mom had a sourdough culture and she baked bread. But I don't know that I was explicitly thinking of that, but for some reason it was just like a thing in my head that I couldn't get rid of. And so every time I would hear like sourdough or anything like that, and I'd always loved really good bread, and it just stuck with me. So I just started doing it. And I think one of the interesting things about cooks and chefs versus bakers and pastry chefs is a difference in temperament. And like there's so many chefs out there who absolutely will not bake. They hate it because all the work is done before the active portion. You know what I mean? Like you put in the oven and then you lose control. And they don't like that. They like the control in the minute. So they like to have something in their pan that they can stir, that they can flip, that they can, like pull at just the right minute and then cut in a certain way, And bakers, I think, are a little more like maybe premeditated and, I don't know what it is, but so I definitely had that sort of mentality where it was like, I really love nothing more than just like making a huge batch of dough, treating it the right way, shaping it, getting it in the oven, and then just leaving it alone and like letting it come out. And so that was really fun. And also, I really love the bakery, just the bakery model of like, if you go in a bigger city, you go to a great bakery, or even, something like Ibis or Heirloom here. You go and there's a whole array of pastries and they just look amazing and the smells are great. And so that's what I kind of tried to do with the ice cream, was like, something for every palate, something interesting, something surprising, that kind of stuff.
Do you ever miss it? Like, do you ever get like that itch again? I mean,
Oh, totally, yeah. I never get to bake anymore because, we're just so busy with all kinds of other stuff. And I used to bake at home all the time, even when I wasn't working. But now I'm never not working. And with the kids, like, that's busy. So I definitely miss it. But at the same time, there's like no tougher business to try to do than I think bakeries are even tougher than restaurants just because of the time demands. And I think the lack of just general knowledge that people have about like great bread or, anything, there's just not a demand for it. Yeah. And your stuff goes bad in a day. Whereas ice cream, we can make it at any time. It goes in a freezer, it stays good. And it's just, a lot easier in that respect. So, bakeries are tough. Like I miss it a lot, but I don't think I'd ever want to do one.
For Chalkboard Podcast listeners, Audible's offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. Maybe you check out The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna, in which a former prisoner of war returns from Vietnam and moves his family to Alaska, where they face tough conditions.
One of my favorite things every week is wondering what book you're going to pick.
I actually put a claim on this book at the library, so I'm excited about it.
You didn't get it from Audible?
To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/chalkboard. Again, that's audibletrial.com/chalkboard for your free audiobook.
So ice cream has a little bit of a family thing for you. You met your wife working in Sparky's, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, and I didn't, full disclosure, I didn't meet her in the ice cream parlor, but, it was
for
around.
the story you did, yeah.
Yep. So, I worked in a bookstore that was just down the block from the ice cream parlor.
Yep.
And she would come and trade some ice cream for the Sunday paper on Sundays.
That is the most romantic thing that I've ever heard.
Yeah, that's a modern day romance.
It's just like only in a college town, like bartering ice cream for a paper.
Yeah. I got to leave this interview. I got a screenplay to write. I'm going to go work on that.
Yeah, so that was, that was great. And then, and it just, it built from there. It was it was just like kind of a nice locus for our, relationship. And we all knew the same people down there and, we're all friends and we liked everybody that we worked with and knew. And so it was, Columbia is really great in that way. Like most college towns, it's kind of a microcosm.
So talk a little bit about the decision to open Betty Rae's, because you guys, were in Columbia and then moved to Kansas City and had a couple different jobs. But what kind of made you decide, hey, Betty Rae's is something I want to do? Running an ice cream shop in Waldo is something I want to do. What was that process like for you guys?
Yeah, it was a really tough decision because it's just such a big gamble. And it's the kind of thing that when you're poised at the edge of that, and you realize, this could go one of two ways. And, if it goes bad, like, we are on the hook for so much. And not only that, but just the psychological effect of, like, oh, we tried and, failed or whatever. I mean, it'd be awful. So, you're kind of thinking through all that stuff, and it's really difficult. But at the same time, it was something that we just kind of had to do, just because we both had that feeling of, like, loving places like that so much and really enjoying going to them, and not really having a place like that we would go to here. And so,
so make it yourself.
Let's do this. And so that was kind of the thinking behind it. It was made even tougher because we had, my wife gave birth to our first daughter the week we signed the lease on the shop. So it was
wow.
Yeah, it was like baby and shop.
Yeah.
So, like, she was going through all that, and I was going through all the stuff with the shop, and I was baking full time when we were starting the shop. Mm-hmm. So, I'd be going in early in the morning, baking, and then getting off, and then working on the parlor, and then doing that. So, yeah, it was pretty crazy. I mean, I wouldn't want to go back and do all that again. It was tough.
Yeah. And you guys have been open for like a little over 2 years now, or around 2 years?
Coming up on 2 years.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's even crazier for you, but it still feels new.
Oh, it feels like a decade to me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Man.
I mean, no, like it every week has felt like a year. Like it's so much. I mean, the beautiful thing about it is, like, it's fun for everybody. Like, the people that go there love it. And I mean, people will stand in line for 20, 30 minutes, and that's amazing. Like, that's a real honor, honestly. But I mean, like, I deal with all the stresses, and so like, I have to solve all the problems. And so,
So talking about that, you kind of got your love of ice cream, working at a parlor and coming up with these flavors and ideas and stuff like that. How do you kind of manage or balance the, being creative and making the ice cream and putting out different, unique, quality, creative products people want, but also, trying to manage a small business and make it successful?
That's a really tough thing because it's always changing, and that's a really hard thing to adjust to. So for the first year, I was, doing like 15 plus hour days, 7 days a week, and I was doing everything in the kitchen. And so, I mean, that meant that I could, like, also innovate at the same time. So I'd have an idea and I'd do it, and that was great. But I was also, like, severely overworked, and I didn't see the kids enough, and et cetera. And so then I got some great help, and I have some amazing people right now in the kitchen. And so now the challenge is, like, letting them do all that stuff and kind of guiding that in the right way and trying to still be involved, but also having so much other stuff to do and trying to focus on all aspects of it. So, my role in the place is always changing. But I think one thing that I've tried to do and that I hope I'm doing is just allowing everybody to have the kind of freedom in there and to be comfortable enough in that environment where they can create. Because, if you're in there and you're stressed, or, if you don't feel like things are coming out right, if you don't feel good, you're not going to do interesting or new things, and you're going to be afraid to try stuff or whatever. So, hopefully we can, keep that kind of spirit going as we get bigger.
I mean, that's what's great about on the consumer side of when you walk into Betty Rae's is there is an atmosphere. Like, it's crazy. There's lines around the block almost all the time when you go in, especially as the weather's getting warmer. But when you walk in, the staff is typically really jovial, fun, easy to hang out with. We went in on free scoop night back in winter, and it was
This latest one? Or
yeah,
okay.
It was back in December, and it was like, oh, let's go get ice cream. Had no idea Free Scoop Day was going on. I was like, oh, it's going to be great. No one's going to be there because it's cold, and we just want to go get ice cream. But sure enough, line out the door, and we had no idea why. And then all of a sudden, it's like free scoops, and you see the staff running around, but there's still like this positivity that's in there.
Yep.
And I think you were even behind the counter.
Oh yeah,
that night.
We were all in pajamas.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think that's the really cool thing about this like local shop is it does feel like a fun environment. It feels like a loving environment. I mean, not to go over the top with it, but I think that's what helps draw people in. And so it's cool that you can kind of foster that.
Yeah, I think the atmosphere is so important. And I mean, I think we've all been to businesses where like they really try to dictate the process, or like they say, oh no, you can't have that, or like, don't do this, or line up here, or all that stuff.
It's a lot of coffee shops. I have that problem at coffee shops a lot where as coffee gets more cultured, I would say, and I love I love coffee almost more than anything. And getting told like, oh, we don't do that, or it's as is is a
right. Or you
it's a
can't take this to go.
frustrating- Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
No, you have to drink it in 30 seconds or else
Yep.
it goes bad.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not the most fun thing. But I mean, like I respect the way anybody wants to do their own thing.
Yeah.
And if they make it work, that's great. But, for ice cream, you certainly could do that. Like you could say, oh, no, I don't want you to eat this on a cone because that would interfere with the flavor profile and balance and all that stuff. But there's something about ice cream where like it takes everybody back to childhood. They don't want it to be complicated. They don't want it to be negative. They want it to be fun and, comfortable and easy. And you can still make great ice cream and do that. But that was the number one thing. And I think that's why it's worked because, I mean, we have like, I had a guy that came in today and I made him a milkshake and he came up after and he said that was the best milkshake he'd had in 60 years. And he was like, no joke, that I'm being serious. Like this is that's an awesome compliment. And then, we have little kids coming in and running around and, loving what they're having. So you kind of get that range.
So going back to kind of the culture of Betty Rae's along with the vibe of the space, I think part of it is obviously most people go to ice cream to celebrate, or you go to ice cream because you're happy or it's warm outside or to celebrate. So you kind of hedging there, or you got the leg up there because it's a happy thing, right? You're not a dentist. But how else? What steps have you taken, whether like in hiring or in kind of the design or the ordering process or the the visual aspects of the space? Like what have you done to try to foster a space where people can enjoy themselves and enjoy your ice cream and just be happy?
Oh yeah, all of that was really important. Everything that you mentioned, you want to make it very intuitive so people kind of know where to go. They're not worried about, oh, do I line up here? Do I look at this? Do I look at that? Where's the menu? How do I do this? And we're still working on that. So like we never thought we'd have lines as long as we do. So we need to make some paper menus and maybe have a menu stand outside so that people can kind of see, they can look at that ahead of time. And then that's something to do while you're in line, whatever. One thing that worked out well was that we have all the flavors in the display case written down, but we also have them on the wall bigger. And you can see that through the window. So you can see people in line looking through the window, getting the flavors. So like there's little technical stuff like that. And I think some of the things were also kind of accidental in that when, we had a really tight budget. And so we were doing everything ourselves, from like building the counters and the tables and those cubbies we talked about to like, everything. And because we did it all, it gave it a way more homey sort of feel. And like I made the menus chalkboards, not because it was like a trendy thing, but because I knew I was always going to be changing it.
Thank you for that, by the way. It works well for our podcast.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
No, go.
Those menu words are sponsored by our podcast.
We haven't talked to him about that yet.
Is that why I'm here?
Yeah.
This is the first part. The pitch process happens after this.
Yeah. No. So yeah, it's like it just works. And people connect to it. Like kids like to look at that. It gives it a hand, drawn feel. Because no matter how good I do the chalkboards, there's always going to be some weird lines or whatever. And it's a lot of fun to do. And so I think all of that stuff together, and then the colors of the space, and like me and my wife are both really into illustration, and we both did a lot of that in college and after. And so we made coloring pages for people to draw on, and so we draw most of those. But then we've also been getting like local people to draw coloring pages, which is awesome. And so we're starting to get more of those in, and just all of those little aspects, just putting care into all of it. I think people get it.
It seems like you're really, like you pay a lot of attention to detail and you're detail oriented.
Oh yeah.
Would you consider yourself a perfectionist though? Because at the same time, you've talked about just sort of like letting people be creative and letting people figure stuff out.
Yeah.
So you don't strike me as a perfectionist, but you seem like you really do like to kind of know everything that's going on in the shop and have your hand in it.
I think you can be a perfectionist up until the point where you can't do everything yourself. And, because like if I was, it goes back to like the illustration thing. Like I'll stay up until 4 a.m. to get it right, or bread or whatever. If I'm just doing it alone, I'll do everything I can to make it right. But, you have to give away control at some point. And if you have too much to do, then you just can't. So, you just say I will do my best to make it as good as it possibly can be. But if it's a little rough around the edges, then, that's what it has to be. You kind of have to accept things. But I think kids helped with that too, honestly. Because I mean, he's like,
you're
stop.
Zero control.
I don't want to say you like stop caring as much, but you kind of stop. You care as much, if not more, but you just take things a little more lighter. I don't know.
roll
Just
the-
kind of like
you roll the punches
Yeah, you
a
just
little
roll
bit.
the punches a little bit more.
Yeah, or you lose that like 10 to 15% of energy that allows you to care that
Yeah.
hard or something.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
And like I appreciate as like a parent of kids, and we've taken our son into Betty Rae's before. Like just being a place where you can take kids is really nice.
I would love to see your son in Betty Rae's. I feel like
he's
his
been
eyes
there.
are just huge the
He's
whole
been there
time.
and he loves it. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Seeing little kids, like it was really hard to do the business having kids at the same time. Like I think back to if we were still in our 20s and we had no kids, how much easier this would have been.
Yeah.
But also how much less rewarding. Because when I saw happy kids before I had kids, I was just like, oh, cool, a happy kid.
Yeah.
But now, like when I see a happy kid, I'm like, oh, that kid is like their world is like a light, you know. And the
Because
parents are happy.
You realize how sad the kids are a lot of other time. You really get the other side too.
Yeah, because like they're when something doesn't go their way, like if they don't like the way their juice tastes, like their world is crushed.
Right.
You know, it's the worst thing.
There's
that's
no
ever
middle
happened.
ground,
No.
yeah.
And so to see a happy kid is like, oh wow, that's awesome. And to see a place where a lot of people are happy, like, and you know, like the other thing is ice cream parlors will usually only have like a little bit of seating because it's hard to pay for that whole square footage with just scoops. And so people don't take the risk. And so we were actually really worried that the place would be too big.
Oh.
And whereas like we filled it up and we see families come in and they treat it like a coffee shop, which is awesome because they like come in, like there was a group today, I think some kids were on spring break. And so they just came in and they just hung out for like an hour and it was a ton of adults, ton of kids, and it was really nice.
Yeah.
And so like just seeing that is really wonderful.
Do you think the square space was the biggest risk when you kind of found that spot? Was that your biggest concern?
Well, we knew what we were doing. Like we'd done ice cream before. It wasn't a case of like, a lot of people do kind of jump into food and they're like, well, I like to cook at home, so why couldn't I do this? And it's just like, oh, you don't know what you're in for. So we knew what was up. We knew what equipment to get, and we knew that we could do it anywhere from like 1,200 to 2,400 square feet or something. And we could just do a small version of what we wanted to do or a bigger one. And this was just happened to be on the bigger end. And we negotiated a really good rent, so where like it was just going up every month for 5 years, and so we were like, okay, well we've got 5 years to make it work, and thankfully it worked really quick.
Yeah.
So we didn't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Best case scenario right there, yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's funny to think that I was really worried about how big it was, and I was like, the dining room was huge. We had a lot of seats, and it was like, oh geez, I don't want it to look big and empty. And when I would bring people from the restaurant industry into the kitchen just to show them, they'd be like, oh, wow, you got a lot of elbow room here. Like, there's actually a decent amount of space. And I was like, oh, which is good to hear, but also like, oh, it's, you pay for space.
Yeah.
And, we have filled both. We filled the kitchen, we filled the dining room. Like, we're using every square inch of it, and that's pretty nice.
It's cool. So what, there's ice cream, there's staples, and there's trends that come kind of in and out in the landscape. And obviously you guys wanted to do something pretty specific based on kind of what you've experienced before in your ice cream life and then kind of what you see for the future. So like what makes Betty Rae's unique as an ice cream parlor, like in Kansas City or like in the greater ice cream landscape?
Well, I think a lot of people do pay attention to trends a lot, and I like to know what's going on, but at the same time, I like to like we were talking about detail orientation, and like to me, context is really important. So it was a lot more important that the ice cream parlor fit into the neighborhood and fit into the city than it was like, I want this thing to conform to my vision, and I want to be able to put this anywhere.
Yeah.
So I think if we had done the same shop in any part of town, it would have looked a little different, would have felt different, and so on. And so, yeah, that's just kind of how I looked at that stuff.
It does seem like it fits in really well, like in the Waldo area. Like I think about, was it the Classic Cookie? Is that the name of it? There's a lot of like really cool smaller shops in there that feel like it's a neighborhood build. And I think Betty Rae's fits right into that.
Yeah, and it would be really nice. Like, I mean, you can kind of imagine if every neighborhood was like that. And it's really cool seeing places like Urban Cafe and District Biscuit on Troost pop up because, I mean, like, and Ruby Jean's Juicery, because just every side of town could have that feel. Like, it would be really awesome. And there's so many empty storefronts. And if it was just like, I don't know if the rents need to be cheaper or if, something else needs to happen or what, but I think it's really great. And I think the best parts of the city are those parts that have those little shops and you're like, oh, I didn't know this was here. Or like we were just talking about Slaps Barbecue. I've mentioned that to so many people, and people are like, "Oh, I didn't know that was up there." And then they find Split Log Coffee across the street, and they're like, "Oh, what a great coffee shop!" And then they're like, "Oh, this side of town's really cool."
Yeah, I live in Old Overland Park, and I like to make that like an afternoon of like going to Split Log and like spending a little time, and then going to Slaps because they're both worth.
It's Saturday.
It's a little bit of drive. It's a little bit of drive for me, 15 minutes, but it's worth it because that niche of area is so cool.
Yeah, and I think in a perfect city, like there would just be something to foster that, and every neighborhood could be like that. And so it's really nice. Like I've heard from so many neighbors of the ice cream parlor back in those neighborhoods that they've never seen as many people walking around, like families going out, families walking up the trail, people biking, and then coming up to the shop. And I mean, that's really cool. And people warned us about that spot. Like, it was a frozen yogurt place. They closed really fast. And so people are like, oh, that means the spot's bad. But it was actually, it was a shop.
Curse.
The other place was bad. Like, they just didn't know what they were doing. But also, if you go one block up, there's, there's like a kind of sex shop up there, and there's a vape shop and a Domino's and whatever. So it's just like, and then it just slowly gets worse up Wernal. Yeah. And it's like, every neighborhood could be special like that. Every block could have some great stuff on it.
It's funny how little it kind of took. It took one shop to bring in a whole lot of walking traffic. And to your point, like imagine if there was more like right on Troost, or if there was more in like certain little areas. That's one thing Kansas City I feel like really lacks is a sort of a walking traffic. We drive everywhere.
Yep.
Like that's the like big city feel that I think we miss a lot is that walking traffic.
Well, it's kind of decentralized in that respect, and that's something we found when we did the ice cream truck. Because so our first year, we got so many requests for events outside of the parlor. And we're like, oh, wow. So we were just packing up cups, taking them in dry ice coolers, and then taking them around town. And that was just, tedious. So we got the truck. We took it all over town, and we realized, like, there aren't really centralized areas with high density that much. You have stuff like First Fridays, and then the things in the bottoms, and then anytime there's a festival, and then you have Boulevardia and that kind of thing. But there's there's not like a business district where there's a ton of office workers or, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It's just very kind of sprawled. So that is something to fight. But I think you're also seeing a lot of people move back into the city because they want that kind of life. They want to live in the more dense areas where there's more fun stuff to do.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the statistic I saw where it's like an enormous amount of people moving back into the city over the last like 3 years. Yeah. Like hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
What can people, maybe not what can people expect going in, but talking about flavors, right? What do you guys have like specific flavors like that are always on rotation, or do you have standards, or
what are the staples?
Yeah.
One flavor that kind of like typified what I wanted it to be, what I wanted the place to be, was the brown butter and toasted pecans. Because it was like, butter pecan, that's a classic. And a lot of people, like you can go to the grocery store and get 10 different butter pecans and they'll all be okay. But so we browned up the butter and, just got the sugar balance right. A little bit of salt, a little vanilla, and, we toast the nuts. And because of the pecans, it ends up being a little expensive, but I think it's worth it. And that's been the top seller since we opened. I mean, it's just crazy. Yeah. And that's, people from, 6 years old to 90. They just love it, especially the older crowd, because I think it tastes like a classic flavor, but it's really well done. Aside from that, like the cookies and cream is really popular. The s'mores that we do was the first one where everybody was like, "Wow, that's amazing." Because nothing ever tastes like a s'more when it's a s'more thing. Like a s'more candy bar.
Or a s'more Pop-Tart.
It's never the flavor of a s'more.
It's such a bummer. Even not to trash another ice cream thing, but Ben & Jerry's has a s'more ice cream, and it's trash. It's like chocolate ice cream with, the dominant flavor is chocolate, and then it's got a little marshmallow fluff. And it's like, well, that's not what a s'more is at all.
S'more works at all, no.
Yeah, so we make the marshmallow cream from scratch. We torch it on giant sheet trays. We have a huge torch in the kitchen. It's like a flamethrower. And so we just, torch the marshmallow, and then, mix that into the cream base. So the base is this like torch marshmallow flavor. And then we make the fudge from scratch, swirl that in with the graham crackers. And that's, people love it. So that's one of the tops too. And then some new kind of weird ones that we made. I mean, not so weird, I guess, but one that surprised me was goat cheese. We do a goat cheese and apricot with candied walnuts. And that one, that came from a bread that I had done at a place a while back. Because, goat cheese and bread, obviously. And then, fruit and nuts and bread.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh yeah, that would work. And I thought it would just like be here for a month and be kind of niche, but I never got so many phone calls and emails about a flavor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so people were going crazy for the goat cheese, and so we kept that around. We did a cereal milk that was kind of a play on, like milk bar stuff.
Yeah, you did. That's my personal favorite.
That's another one where it was like, we thought we'd do it for a couple of months, but I mean, we made it permanent. It just had to stay.
I was really worried. One time, I just sound awful right now, but I went in and you were out one time, so I got the s'more, and the s'more was incredible. I have a diary, basically, of all the ice creams I tried.
Ice cream diary.
Not really.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that one, that's another one where like the work that goes in is like, so cereal milk sounds simple. You think it's like, oh, just ice cream and cereal.
Just throw it all in there, right? That's all you do.
Yeah, and you could, and it would be still pretty good. But so what we did was Fruity Pebbles, steep them overnight in the cream.
Oh my gosh.
Then
I'm so excited to hear about this.
Yeah, then give it a really hardcore blend, like really blend it in there. Just a little bit of natural cherry and orange oils to really boost the fruit flavor. A little bit of salt. And then we took like 7 or 8 different kinds of trash cereals and then made a granola out of them. So we basically made a malt syrup, coated the cereal, baked it to like give it that crunch and maintain the crunch. And then we found Lucky Charms marshmallows online. Just the marshmallows.
Oh, wow.
So you can get them on Amazon. Yeah, a big 2-pound bag, which that's dangerous snacking.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
just by the handful. So then we mixed all that together, mixed that in with the ice cream. So it's like a lot of work for something that is just kind of like, it's cereal.
But this is kind of what I was talking about earlier when we were talking about even the burn-in ice cream. It's not just a gimmick. You actually take the time to figure out the best way to do something, and it pays off every time. Maybe not every time. I'm sure you have some stories.
All religion aside, what he just described of making cereal milk ice cream is like should have the term intelligent design.
It's intelligent design.
That was just like a beautiful thing. I do want to talk a little about collaboration stuff in Kansas City because I know, we've talked about the Joe's Kansas City Burn-Ins ice cream and the delicious beer floats that you brought us are, local beers. So kind of when you're thinking about making an interesting new, kind of collaboration with using Thou Mayest coffee or stuff like that, like do you kind of see local Kansas City companies and think, oh, I could do something with them, or do you have the idea first and seek them out, or how does that stuff kind of come about?
So the Joe's thing, I had wanted to do a barbecue ice cream since we opened. Even before we opened, I had the idea.
Had you ever had one before? I mean, I know no one in Kansas City, but you've never had a barbecue ice cream before.
No, never had it anywhere, never heard of it.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing. Like, so we did the cereal milk. I purposely have not had any milk bar stuff because I don't want to just copy somebody. Mm-hmm. But I've never heard. If I had heard of a barbecue ice cream, I wouldn't have tried it. I had an idea of what I wanted it to be. So I was like, all right, yeah, barbecue ice cream. Then I emailed Joe's. I just used the contact page on their website.
Yeah.
And I was like, I really want to do this. And then thankfully, like their chef, Kerry, got back to me, and he's just a great dude. And he was like, oh, this is a really interesting idea. And then he helped. He got me some burn-ins and some sauce. And he's like, obviously we need to approve everything and, all that stuff. And so, we made a few batches and sent them over, and they loved them. And it was funny how it was just like, it was all so under the radar. And it was like, it was just a thing we were doing.
Yeah.
And then... so I got it back, and we were getting ready to put it out in the shop. And then the Kansas City Star, happened to be in doing a story on something else. And they had one of the other ice cream parlors in town drop out of a story. And so they're like, oh, they just came over to our place. And then I was like, oh, yeah, I've been working on this barbecue ice cream. And they were like, what? And so they took a photo, and they put it on the cover. So it was on the cover of the food section in the Star.
I remember getting that issue.
Great photo.
Yeah.
It's like they did an awesome job. And so that was big. And then I had to go on like TV and stuff. But anyway, so it was like, it was just, a little germ of an idea, but you just keep rolling it uphill, and then, hopefully it pays off. And even if it hadn't, it would have been interesting.
Yeah.
And then we would have
tried
done
it.
Yeah. And I'm really glad Joe's went for it. And it's a testament to them because, they're huge. Like the New York Post, right before we dropped the flavor, called them the best barbecue in the country.
Yeah.
Or the best barbecue restaurant, whatever it was. But like, they didn't need to let us make their ice cream, and they certainly didn't need to like bring us, pounds and pounds of burn-ins. But they did.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
That's really cool.
And so, I'm glad because they were obviously my first choice, but we would have done it one way or another. So it was nice to be able to use the best. And like, I wanted to, for the coffee, I wanted to use really good coffee. And I think Thou Mayest is a really good partner for us in terms of like their size and, the care that they put into it and their atmosphere. I think it's just like everything's perfect. So it's that kind of thing.
Cool. Any plans to use Stroud's fried chicken in an ice cream?
You know,
I'm just thinking of like Kansas City meat. Like I've been thinking all day about like what's a Kansas City meat we could throw into another ice cream.
yeah, Stroud. Well, we do a chicken and waffles ice cream.
Oh my gosh.
We've done it every spring
Don't
since
tell
we
him
opened.
this.
Wow.
And so it was like a maple syrup base.
Uh-huh.
I got chicken, and then we kind of like small diced it, breaded it, and baked it so that it wasn't too gummy or anything. So maple syrup base with a little bit of herbs like I think rosemary and thyme in there, and then the chicken, and then maple syrup soaked waffles. And so
Mike is about to pass out.
I know.
I'm glad you reminded me because we might have forgotten to do it this spring. So yeah, maybe in the next couple of weeks we'll have to pull that out.
I will be there. I'll be there to have it. Last question I want to ask is, we're recording this around the 2-year anniversary of Betty Rae's ice cream. How's the experience been different than you expected? How has it been better than you expected? Just looking back on 2 years, how do you feel about it?
It's pretty insane. They tell you, I mean, when you read business books and things, they say like, don't think about the best case scenario. Do not, because you have to think about the worst. Think about nobody coming in the door. Think about not making rent. Think about struggling for years and not, you know what I mean? Like, and
It's all I ever think about, the chalkboard. Go ahead.
yeah. So I mean, it's like that's what we were thinking about, and so. I mean, it feels like we don't deserve the attention we get. Like, it's crazy, but it's really nice, and it's kind of humbling. And it's been an insane amount of work, and I mean, we had kids at the same time, and like just as a dad, I mean, like obviously Mary did most of the work, but like I think the business is way harder than the kids. Like the kids are kind of a delight, and the business is still great, but it's way more stressful. But it's just been really nice to, like be able to create a place where people love to come. And I think when the pitch said we were the best ice cream, I think last year, that was really cool. And it was a nice kind of feeling that, we kind of did what we set out to do, which was just make something, that Kansas City would really love and that could be of this place.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
That's cool. Well, David, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much,
Yeah,
man.
thanks for having me. It was really fun.
What a sweet treat of an episode.
A sweet treat indeed.
I've been waiting to use that one.
Yeah, man. If you're in Kansas City, why are you not at Betty Rae's right now?
It's a
And
destination.
if you're not from Kansas City, book a ticket on JetBlue or whatever and get here and go to Betty Rae's right away. I like to follow Betty Rae's on Instagram. It's just at Betty Rae's, BettyRaes. And it just always makes me hungry for ice cream because they're always posting delectable treats of their ice or delectable pictures of their treats.
Did you see the Taco Tuesday one?
Yes, I did.
Oh my gosh.
Everything looks good, man. It just inspires you to eat ice cream, which I guess is the point of social media. But
That's all it is on my Instagram Discover feed is types of ice cream.
yeah, but thanks again to David for hopping on the show and bringing us some delicious ice cream floats. Everyone go to Betty Rae's.
Yeah, guys, and thank you for listening this week and every week. We really do appreciate it. If you'd like more of the Chalkboard podcast, make sure you check out our Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, and you can also visit our website, chalkboardpodcast.com. If you're a regular listener or just loved what you heard, make sure to rate, share, and subscribe to this podcast however you listen. Our theme song is Killers, written and performed by Salah Rajabnik, and you can get his latest release, Black and White World, on Apple Music or Spotify. That's it for us this week. We'll see you next time.